start. But in the busyness of our lives, in the chaos of our lives, when's the last time you actually stopped and reflected? Actually looked back from where you've come, or a particular project or topic you've worked on has actually come from? When's the last time you actually treated the cause of something rather than the symptoms of something? When's the last time you asked why 5 times? We often just want to keep moving forwards and lurching forwards. We've even developed catchy phrases like failing fast or failing forwards or agile or waterfall is all about how do we just keep moving forwards. But before I alienate a few people in the room that actually love these methodologies, they have a place. I use them at different times. I use these terms. They have a place, but if that's all we do is just keep moving forwards and don't look back sometimes, we may miss the opportunity to truly solve some of the problems we're trying to solve in the circular economy and climate action. So today, as we look back to the beginning, start at the beginning, there's 3 areas I want to focus on. I'm going to do a lot of things in threes today, okay? We're going to peel back the layers as we look back to start at the beginning. We're going to look at the big picture, and we are going to look backwards to go forward. So I'll unpack that as we move through today. So the world of art is a great one for peeling back the layers. There's a lot of mystery and myth in the world of art. On the left, why did Renoir paint a different couple in his original painting? So the technology to look underneath and see what was there originally. Why did Vermeer overpaint the wall at the time? Was there criticism? Was there different values and ethics at play at the time? Was there money involved? So it's important in the roles that we have in science and research, we don't just take things at face value, we peel back the layers and see what might be underneath in our approach. So the way I'm going to peel back the layers first, in the first of those 3 items I mentioned, is let's look at the drivers that are going on in the water industry. And thanks, Rock, he touched on all of these in some way or another, so hopefully you can pick out of Rock's presentation as well. There's 3 drivers. There's maybe more, but there's 3 drivers I'll talk about in the water industry that apply also in other industries. So, population growth and urbanisation, climate change, ageing assets and infrastructures, 3. So I'm going to expand on those at the moment. The first of those, population growth and urbanisation. This is an image, thanks to Monash University, the eastern suburbs of Melbourne from 1985 to 2020, showing the staggering rate of urbanisations out further east. We're replacing forests, trees, native grasslands, waterways, rivers, creeks with roads, driveways, hard surfaces that cause flooding and urban heat island effect. If you go out west, now don't try and look at both images at once, pick one and then move to the other. It does a brain overload on you. Western suburbs is even worse of Melbourne. I'm pretty sure, Rock, you could, western suburbs of Sydney is probably going to look even worse than that again. So what stress does that cause us as a water utility? Yeah, we need to keep up with the supply of water into those populations. We need to keep up with the infrastructure to supply that water, to take the sewage away and treat it, but also the stress on our customers as well. They're living in these outer suburbs, often a long way away from infrastructure themselves, good train stations and buses, but we've created environments where the water, where it falls, we've designed it to just rush off and move on. We're creating flooding problems, and we're creating urban heat island stress on our customers and communities. They're not the most livable environments for our customers and communities to live in. That second driver, as we peel away the layers, climate change. I'm sure our audience here, I'm not going to labour on this one, but there's so many stats in this place, and correct me if I've got this wrong. Globally, 2024 was the hottest year on record, no, the hottest June on record, and I think we've had the hottest day on record globally in 2024. There's so many stats we could put forward in this space around climate change. That influences or impacts a water utility in, you guessed it, 3 ways. Well, I'm going to propose 3 ways. The obvious one is drought. That scarcity of water, the water restrictions that we have to deal with. But what happens in drought is the ground contracts, our pipes actually shift, and we have breaks and leakages that we need to address as well. Trees go looking for moisture and their roots get into our pipes and structures and they break, causing more leaks and bursts and things for us to have to deal with. Storms are more severe in climate change. In January of 2021, 6,500 of our customers in the Mount Dandenong region of outer Melbourne had their power out by major storms, trees falling over. It had been a wet year, the prevailing winds came in from a different direction. They just weren't out of power for a few days. They not just out of power for a few weeks, some of them were out of power for many months in there. That causing them significant stress and hardship, but some of our employees were in that space as well and they were really stressed out. Obviously, a disruption to their water and their sewage supply in that time as well, that we had to work very hard to recover. And floods as well. The 2022 floods of Eastern Australia, I read a stat somewhere that 68% of Australia's population were in a declared disaster zone in that time. That is staggering. So the damage to their properties, but the damage to a water utilities infrastructure. The pipes, our pump stations were flooded, not ours personally, we're not in that, but the water utilities, their treatment plants were flooded as well, and the contamination as sewer enters that environment as well in a flood scenario. Very damaging for a water utility in the face of climate change and adapting to that. Our assets, our infrastructure, buried under the ground, you don't see them, you don't know much about them until there's a burst in the middle of your street and you can't get out to go to work in the morning. Like many of the urban centres in Australia, we are facing a wall of infrastructure. Melbourne boomed in the 1950s and 60s, so the kilometres of pipework that you can see that went in, so we are facing pipes and structures that are 60, 70 years of age that we're now having to deal with. We need to make sure we deal with this in a sustainable way, and Rock touched on it as well, in terms of how do we use recycled materials as we renew and replace these. How do we repurpose the materials that we take out as well is a challenge for us to do this. So we've peeled back the layers of those drivers in the water industry as well, and there's probably more. We can discuss them over morning tea or lunch. Let's talk about one of those as we start at the beginning of things as well, as flooding. How do we address flooding? Let's go back to the beginning. Let's look at what our cities may have looked like pre-development, before the houses and before those structures. The environment, the land could deal with the water, and we didn't have floods anywhere near to this extent. So I'm going to introduce the concept of sponge cities. Sponge cities have been implemented in scale. They're nature-based solutions implemented in scale in China in particular, but are starting to come through in other parts of the world. And sorry to keep coming back to your presentation, Rob, but I'm sure what's coming through in some of the new plans in Western Sydney will look at a lot of these nature-based solutions. So what is a sponge city? It's 3 things. It retains, it detains, and it disperses. So where the rain falls, it retains that in the environment there for as long as possible with nature-based solutions. Get to use the water where it lands, that community gets to enjoy it and use it. Then as that water flows through the landscape, it's retained, it's slowed down for as long as possible. So nutrients can be absorbed, there's no erosion, sedimentation can occur, and communities on the way can use that water as well. And then that disperse. When it gets to its end point, the way it's released into the environment is there's no point concentration. it's spread to where it needs to be. And so we are starting to take that on in Australia. One particular project we're doing with University of Melbourne. This is a pretty typical urban wetland called Troops Creek in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. Pretty typical. It doesn't work though. It detains some of the water, but it doesn't particularly treat the water. So what we're doing with this is, fortunately, with the world of IoT, the advent of much cheaper devices and sensors and battery technology and communications technology, we're sensoring this wetland. We are remotely controlling valves and actuators to control the level and the flow of this wetland, so that by the time it gets to the end, we actually have much better water quality. The plan is then to put a very small package treatment plant on the end and start supplying Class A recycled water to the homes around that wetland. So they get to use the water where it falls, literally in their backyard. We're also applying real-time control to protect the environment of the platypus around Monbulk Creek in the Dandenongs as well, but we can discuss that over morning tea or lunchtime. The second on our journey to start at the beginning is let's look at the big picture. I was fortunate to do a little bit of travel in Europe earlier in the year, and some of the artwork in the galleries there are absolutely enormous. So you do have to stand back to take it all in. Don't stand too far back because you can't see the detail in it. Don't stand too close to it, otherwise you miss out on some of the things that are going on. So I'm no art expert, sorry about that, but in this is so many things going on in this piece of art. It's a family portrait. It's a representation of the Last Supper of Christ. It's a painting of a village feast. It's a record of the power structure and who was in charge in that village at the time and the hierarchy of what was going on in that village, and so many more things in that painting as well. Helps when you have an audio guide in your ear. I would have never picked even half of that out. So it's important that you stand back and look at the big picture to see all the things that are going on. And I think in the science of circular economy and climate change, we definitely need to be doing that. It's a pretty big picture. Yesterday, Lou took us through the issue of nitrous oxides. 300 times more potent than CO2. I'm talking to an audience that knows about this, so I'll move on this one quickly. There is a fair amount of nitrous oxides coming from our sewage wastewater treatment plants that we need to get better at monitoring and controlling and treating. But imagine if you can take the nitrogen of nitrous oxides out of the process, diverted at source, and this is our project with the NICE Hub. Thank you, Sean, and the team, where we are taking urine diverting toilets, putting it in a trailer, membrane bioreactors, and we will have a mobile facility that will be producing liquid ammonia nitrate fertiliser. Why are we doing this? Yes, it helps us take the nitrogen out and makes treating nitrous oxides, treating nitrogen at our treatment plants a lot easier if we can implement this at scale. But we're doing this to test this with our community. What are their attitudes and behaviours towards this type of technology? To Django's question right up the front, is it yuck? Or is actually, I would use this fertiliser and this toilet in preference because it's making a difference to the climate and our climate action. So we'll be putting that, we'll have it, when we're having it, Sean, November, we'll have it down in Melbourne sometime early next year, hopefully. So let's keep looking at the big picture. Sorry, I work in water and sewage all the time, so this might get a bit gross for some people, but toilet paper, you use it, you flush it, it's gone, you don't think about it again, it's waste, it's awful, no further use. That's what most of our customers think. Toilet paper is a great source of cellulose, and there's a lot going on in the world of green chemistry that is looking to cellulose as a major substantial feedstock to replace many of the world's petroleum-based materials. I'm just not making this up. You're not meant to read that. But to just give you an example of the scale of what can be done with cellulose and other biomass-based materials. Cellulose, convert that into packaging materials, bioplastics, solvents, chemical building blocks for pharmaceuticals, and many other chemicals that we use in our daily lives. The transitions are amazing. There's a lot of energy going into, literally, in resources and energy to separate cellulose out from biomass, so from sugar waste, from other plant and agricultural based waste, to separate it out from those other plant-based materials. Here we have cellulose in our sewage system in a relatively clean state. We don't have to separate it out from those other lignins and materials. So there's huge potential for us to move forward in the world of green chemistry. Potentially also save and make a lot of efficiency savings in our treatment plants. Cellulose is really hard to degrade in our treatment plants. But actually, let's keep this material at its highest value for as long as possible, to pick up that phrase. And the third aspect of starting at the beginning, looking backwards to go forwards. Rowers do this over the time. To power forwards, they're looking backwards. They have a point that they are aiming for, on the horizon or their starting point, and that's what they focus on. They focus on that to get to their destination. AWS, Amazon Web Services, have literally written the book on this, working backwards. Where, like Rock said, very impressive amount of customer consultation. How many was it? Did you say 30,000 people were involved in, of Sydney Water's customers were involved in the consultation process to develop their plans? AWS, before they do anything, they've got amazing technology. They should just push it out and do it. But no, they go back and they spend time with their customers. What are their problems to solve? What are their insights? What are their needs? What are their expectations? And they don't move on a project until they are convinced that they are solving a problem, creating a value proposition, and by the way, making money out of it. They will buy it. So perhaps in our cities, we need to be looking backwards to going forwards. In the face of climate change, we've created some pretty hot environments that aren't particularly livable to be in. So what's the inspiration from our cities pre-development? We had tree cover, we had water in the environment. So one project we've done with the University of Melbourne as well, where we've turned some of the common methodology on its head. In our cities, if you want to survive drought, you plant drought-hardy plants that you don't need to water much. We're actually saying plant green, lush, shady trees that do need water. We're saying irrigate, but irrigate at the right times of the day. Old methodology was irrigate in the morning or at night before it gets evaporated. We're saying we want evaporation. We want cooling in the environment. We want greenery, we want shade. And so we're able to demonstrate in these projects the Burnley campus of University of Melbourne and also in our Applebury About housing estate that we could get, with minimum of shade, with the right irrigation at the right time of the day, about a 1 degree cooling in ambient air temperature. One doesn't sound a lot, but it is actually. We believe we can get more with shading and the right drafts and cooling going through, winds through. We can really make an impact on the scale of cooling some of our urban environments. There's some really practical guidance available to do that. Leveraging some of this research, but also the 10 years of research in the CRC for water sensitive cities to actually go about how to go about cooling your house and the environment that you're in. That picture, I was going to take you through 3 steps of how to do it, but we can talk about that over lunch. It's actually 3 plus 2, it's actually 5 steps, but that ruins the 3 things. So, but we can come back to that another time over lunch. So, to wrap it up, let's start at the beginning. So in the world of circular economy and climate action, let's not just keep lurching forwards all the time, trying to push on regardless. Let's make sure every now and then we stop. We peel back the layers. We look at the big picture. And we look backwards sometimes to go forwards, to make sure we're solving the right problems for our customers, for our community, and for our environment. So thank you so much for your attention. And if you are interested in the world of green chemistry a little bit more, it's a great conference I'm involved in coming up later in the year. We can talk about that over lunch as well. So thank you so much.